Samsung, proud sponsor of TechBusters.
You know, there's one thing that everyone does, well, most people do, is that they've got a Facebook account, they Twitter, they're doing Instagram, they're on WhatsApp, for example. The social media numbers are fascinating in South Africa and they are growing at a rapid pace. In fact, last week, the Social Media Landscape 2014 numbers were released. And in studio with us is Michael Ronsky, who's the MD of Fuseware, to talk to us about the social media numbers. Now, this is the third year running that you've been running the report. Yes. How has the report changed in the 3 years? What significant things have you seen happen?
It's been actually an amazing transformation since we began 3 years ago, but I would say the single most important change has been the mobile revolution of the last 3 years. Almost all of our social data is coming from mobile sources right now, as we've decoded in the last few months. It's incredible.
So now, Mike, you guys analyze the numbers in depth, and what for me has been quite interesting this time around is that for the first time, Mixit have been knocked off their perch as the biggest social network in South Africa, and that's been overtaken by Facebook. Tell us about those numbers.
Well, unfortunately, it's a bit of a point of contention because, you know, Mixit has been Africa's darling for so many years. But I think because of the heavy mobile revolution, the amount of smartphone sales being sold in this country, many people are straying into Facebook, into Twitter, but at the same time, Mixit numbers have dropped somewhat, but they haven't. The platform is still in many ways being actively used by a large part of South Africa.
But more the younger population. I think that demographically, Facebook has probably got, you know, a more diverse demographic. Now, the numbers, just under 10 million people are using Facebook in South Africa. That's a massive jump when you consider the fact that the last report was just over 5 million, if I'm not mistaken, and the population of the country is 52 million. You know, we've got over 20% of people, South Africans, that are using Facebook.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible. And if you look at the percentage of people connected to the internet via their smartphones or PCs, you have almost an 80 or 90% penetration of Facebook numbers.
Okay, and the age groups, so if you had to break down those demographics, so what are you seeing on Facebook?
Yeah, well, Facebook, like you alluded to, is really, it's normalized across the board. So you still have a younger skew of the demographic, but, you know, older people have come to the platform in leaps and bounds.
So what about the other social networks? I mean, Twitter, that's grown dramatically. Tell us about Instagram, tell us about WhatsApp. What are the numbers showing there?
Well, it's interesting that Instagram hasn't been analyzed before in South Africa, and we've decoded about 680,000 active users, which is a tremendous amount of people using such a niche social platform. I think in many ways it stems from Instagram's availability on mobile devices and also the ease of use of creating your own content and sharing your own photos to your friends via the app.
And how many people are using Twitter?
Right now, it's about 5.5 million people. It's incredible. This is the number of active people tweeting in the last 3 months.
So how do you guys get those numbers? I mean, how do you come up with 10 million people are using Facebook and 5.5 million are using Twitter? How do you get those numbers?
Right. Well, these numbers are referenced across the board by agencies, brands, whatnot, so we have to be very certain about our methodologies. We use a combination of on-the-field research through our partner Arthur Goldstock and Worldwide Works. We also scan and analyze all the social networks, and we combine the data and the methodologies, and we make we essentially combine them and make the best kind of estimates as to what the real numbers should be.
So, I mean, you and I have spoken about this before. I mean, big data is sexy, hey?
Yes.
I mean, big data is the future, and that's where the research is going to be taking place. That's where all the trends are going to be analyzed. When you look at the current trends, this is 2014, where do you see it going next year? Can you make a prediction? Is there a trend that's starting to build up on where social media is going?
I could easily ask you the same question, Aki, since you're at the forefront of technology too.
Well, I wouldn't know. You've got the data.
Right. In many ways, social media is going into the big data space. I mean, we're analyzing about 54 million tweets every month posted by South Africans. And there's so much rich information and insight that can go into this data. Across the broader South African landscape, companies are now really seeing the value of integrating data within their organizations and also externally through things like social networks in order to create things like business intelligence dashboards that can really drive proper decision making from the data.
Mike Ronsky, the MD of Fuseware, talking to us about the latest social media numbers in South Africa, approaching 10 million people on Facebook. Fascinating numbers, and it's all about the data, and big data is sexy.